I say take the future of Scotland in your own hands.
It's the one opportunity you've got to break the imperialistic sort of hold that Westminster has got over the whole country.
Hope, not fear. Hope, not fear.
We're a family together, we're the same people. Why should we be broken up?
It's time for Scots to make decisions for Scotland.
I think it would be a big mistake.
It is fair to say that for many Americans, the most meaningful thing they know about Scotland is everyone there can play the bagpipes to perfection. There's plenty of very unique beers floating about, and Mel Gibson's Braveheart epic is 100% factual, and that's exactly how the Scots came to blows with England. What they may not realize is what will happen if indeed Scotland decides to become a sovereign nation and break ties with the United Kingdom, how it will affect America, England, and the world. And think on this for a moment. Russia is watching. Welcome to MidPoint, Research Assistant at the Davis Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation and the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom, Dan Kochis. And from Edinburgh, Scotland, from the University of Edinburgh Business School, economist and professor Brad MacKay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Of course, thank you.
Professor MacKay, I'm going to begin with you, seeing you as you are right there where all the action's happening. About 5 hours or so for the Scots to basically cast their votes. What are they saying on the ground now about where this vote might be going?
You know, it's a knife edge. It's really difficult to see which way it's going to go. Most of the polls are giving the no side a slim lead. You know, perhaps more importantly, if you look at the odds that the betting houses are giving, they're giving the no side an 80% chance, and there's some research that suggests that sometimes they can be more accurate. So it's looking like it could be a no, but that it's on a knife edge. It could go either way. We just don't know.
I want you and our viewers now to hear something from Scotland's First Minister, Alex Salmond, the energetic leader of the Yes campaign. He makes a passionate appeal at the end of the final day of campaigning on Wednesday. Here's that interview.
We're engaged in a conversation with our fellow citizens, but we're also engaged in a conversation with the future. We have the opportunity, we have the chance to create a more prosperous economy, certainly, but also to create a fairer society.
When he talks about creating a better society, is that really what people believe? Because if you start looking at what may happen here, it's interesting. Scotland's going to have to try to get into NATO. There's going to be a deterrence factor that's going to change. There's going to be an economy that's going to change. Honestly now, Professor MacKay, is this really, in your opinion, the best thing for Scotland?
You know, a friend of mine said to me that this is one of the first postmodernist votes in history where facts don't seem to matter a whole lot. They've been spun in all kinds of different ways during the campaign, and you've had two very loud campaigns that have been throwing around some very big numbers. It's been really difficult, I think, for Scots to cut through a lot of that noise and to really understand what facts are accurate and which aren't. And I think what we're seeing is that the Yes side has been able to, as you rightly point out, to paint quite a vision of a socially more just, less unequal, wealthier, independent Scotland. I think some of the actual numbers and the facts that economists have been working on would suggest that might not be entirely accurate. But you know, it's a vote for the unknown. It's difficult to know what will happen afterwards. A lot of it would depend on the negotiations with the rest of the UK and with the EU as well.
Dan, let's go to you now and talk about some of the dominoes that may fall here. Certainly, if Scotland goes on its own, they then have to become their own nation. They have to take care of their own. They have to take care of a lot of their own economics. But I mentioned at the top what this means for America. Many Americans, quite frankly, look at this and they go, well, that's nice. I'll go watch the Mel Gibson movie again. But in essence and in truth, what can be the domino that will fall here, in your opinion, the two or three, that really will affect Americans in so many ways?
The first thing is that I think that the U.S.-UK special relationship would be hurt. So you think about how many times the UK has stood side by side with the United States, fighting alongside us, standing for the values of sort of freedom, democracy. It would be certainly hurt if, you know, you think about the fact that Scotland, a third of the landmass of the UK, certainly overrepresented within the military. It would definitely weaken the United Kingdom. I think that an independent Scotland would frankly be militarily insignificant as an ally for the United States. You think about sort of the fact that the Russians, fly very close to Scotland frequently. So you sort of have that element. And that's really where it comes down for the United States. The U.S. needs a strong, United Kingdom to stand by them. And that has an implication even in the immediate term, because you think of when the U.S. is trying to put together a coalition to fight ISIL in the Middle East, Certainly want the UK on board. I think that the government has been very hesitant to commit to anything as far as actual bombings before the referendum. But certainly, if there's a yes vote to leave the UK, it's going to weaken David Cameron, and I think weaken the chances that the UK joins the US in bombing.
The President Obama that is, certainly had his own tweet, his own take on this, as a matter of fact. Here's just an example of what he said. Specifically, the UK is an extraordinary partner for America and a force for good in an unstable world. I hope it remains strong, robust, and united. But he just pointed out there the unstable world. And you used a phrase in there I think that's very important. Militarily insignificant, because I even mentioned the fact that there are missiles, nuclear missiles. That's what the UK uses for their launching point. And if indeed Scotland becomes its own country, they've already decided they don't want nuclear weapons there. This will not only weaken America, this will weaken England certainly, but what about the Russians and Vladimir Putin just watching? You gotta think they're licking their lips when they think of the possibilities that there's going to be a change in the nuclear deterrent.
Well, that's right. You think about the United Kingdom's nuclear deterrent is submarine-based. That's based out of Scotland, so that would need to be moved at significant cost to the British taxpayer, and certainly would weaken the nuclear deterrent there. Sort of unsure where that would be based in the immediate term. And then you think about the projected budget of an independent Scotland's military being less than the budget of the London Metropolitan Police Force. Certainly a concern for both British citizens, but also in the larger term for the United States and for the world's security.
Professor MacKay, let me come to you on this right now. Quite frankly, are the Scottish people being fed a shovelful of what I like to call sometimes bovine excrement by their leaders in how they look at what this is going to do in painting this wonderful rosy picture here, and basically they're being fooled?
You know, that's a very colorful way of putting it. There's a lot of, the reality is with a lot of this, there's a whole host of different things that are going to play into how Scotland would fare afterwards. Some of it has to do with what currency Scotland would use. The Scottish government's position is that they would want to continue using the pound. The UK government's position is that that would not be the case. It would have to do with how negotiations on a whole range of other areas kind of materialized after a vote within the negotiations. But I think it's fair to say that the numbers that the Scottish government have been putting out are very optimistic indeed, and they would require a whole number of things to go right for those numbers to materialize. And the reality is, I think that a lot of economists are saying, there would be a very difficult transition where you'd have to expect a good part of the economic output in Scotland to be knocked off, at least in the short to medium term. And for example, what do large businesses do that are based in Scotland, but a lot of their customers are in the rest of the UK, for example? Do they stay? Do they go? There's a whole host of different things that are come into play here, but I think it's fair to say that the vision, that the argument that the Scottish government has put forward is very optimistic indeed.
I got about 90 seconds left. I'll give you about half of that right now. Simple question that Americans want to know. Do Scots hate the English? If you look at some of the movies that have gone over the years, we're led to believe, and Americans fall for the movies so many times, that Scotland just doesn't like England and wants to get out as quick as they can.
No, I think it's far more complicated than that, actually. If you look at the polls even, 50% of Scots, or even over 50%, identify very much with being British. So I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. There is an element in Scottish society which is anti-English. There's no denying that. But what that element is, maybe a third, maybe a bit less, I think would probably be a bit more accurate. So no, I would say most Scots would say that they don't hate the English, but they want to be self-determining, and they believe that Scotland would be a wealthier, more socially just place as an independent country.
Dan, I got about 40 seconds left. And if indeed Scotland decides to stay with the United Kingdom, isn't it fair to say that the UK is going to offer up a whole lot of new things, if you will? They're going to come up with new ideas to try and keep the Scots as happy as they can be?
I think that's right. Part of the play at the end of sort of the campaign season for the vote has been to promise additional powers over revenues from taxes and whatnot going to Scotland. So I think that that's fair. But certainly it will be interesting to see after the vote, if they do vote to stay in, sort of what the coalition, how strong David Cameron comes out after it.
By the way, Professor MacKay, real quickly, we need to tell people that Braveheart was not entirely factual, right? Let's make sure we let people know that.
No, there was one or two inaccuracies in it.
We got to make sure we tell that because, again, some people think, oh, that's got to be a history lesson. It never really is.
Not the least of which the accent.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that Mel Gibson would like to hear that as well. Everybody I know says he got it wrong. Dan Kochis and Professor Brad MacKay, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be following this story. I hope we have the chance to talk again soon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Later on this hour, the precise answer as to who is to blame for the rash of knuckleheads and abusers popping out of the NFL. And after the break, the medical and military ramifications of fighting Ebola. Not only fighting the disease, but think about this. American military and American money is going to be used once again to build a nation. That's coming up right here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.